you care about characters that aren't just there to be beaten up by Spider-Man. I mean, they did that with the Lizard. I think they did a pretty good job there of making him a sympathetic character. Anti-heroes makes the argument here, such as Walter White or Tony Soprano, are so popular that maybe it's time for an Eddie Brock movie. A Venom movie.
There could be, but that isn't Sinister Six.
No.
Sinister Six is a group of Spider-Man's biggest, nastiest foes getting together to try and kill him.
Yeah.
They need, if they're going to do a Sinister Six movie, they have to do that. If they're going to do an anti-hero movie, then yeah, they could possibly. But would that really just be doing a Spider-Man Dark version of a movie? Who would be the bad guy in that?
Mm-hmm. Well, see, he's saying there as well, or maybe do we do the Flash Thompson, the heroic Flash Thompson version?
Yeah.
I think they're right to have things shaken up. I think we've all seen everything. You can probably predict the ending of most things even better than the general audience, but the general audience is still pretty good at it. They can see all that's coming, so we have to shake it up. You can't just keep telling the same story every day. He talks about the whole idea behind Oscorp being, the unifying part of this universe. Oscorp plays an important part in how the villains get created, obviously, in the first one. So because Peter becomes Spider-Man and came out of that, rather than saying, and then this alien came from space or whatever, they're doing the human hybrid weird stuff at Oscorp. That's where Gwen Stacy works anyway. So that's, the idea of it representing the good and the bad of science, that it can do great things, but it can also mess you up and do really weird and nasty things and transform people. As all science can, it can be used for good or bad. It's nice to have that organising principle, but it wasn't like, we must keep it at Oscorp. It flowed naturally from the story development. I mean, we've seen that in the trailer.
Yeah, we saw the arms, the wings. What else did we see? I know we saw the Doc Ock arms and the glider
and the vulture wings.
And the vulture wings.
Yeah, but I mean, it hinted at things like Morpheus, and it hinted at Venom. Venom's been hinted at as well.
Yeah.
But I like that idea. The Homecoming graphic novel sort of touched on that as well. Newell said that all of Spider-Man's enemies are totems. The vulture, the rhino, the lizard. They're all black cats.
Be careful, you're on dangerous ground there, because so many people hated the totem and the animal motif.
Yeah.
Because it got taken too far that he was always meant to have those powers, and it wasn't an accident. But no, I kind of liked it. Really, it was just Stan Lee was smoking something on the day. But it makes sense. If you have a character based around animals, everyone else does. And having science to do it, science being the kind of the unifying factor there. It doesn't have to be Oscorp, but it's the fact that it's big science. Yeah. It works. You don't need mutants and cosmic rays. You've got science.
Now, the big story.
The big story
this week.
Does it involve Johnny Depp?
No.
So it's the second big story.
Okay. It's the second biggest story. But okay, let's talk about Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp earlier on this week was very strongly rumoured to be all but signed on as Doctor Strange. Tell me a little bit about Doctor Strange, because Doctor Strange is one of the lesser known Marvel characters to the general public.
Well, he is, Doctor Strange is a magician, a sorcerer. He's the Sorcerer Supreme. So he is, in all of the Marvel Universe realities, the most powerful sorcerer there is. What you find sometimes in the comics, I mean, he's part of the Avengers occasionally and Secret Defenders, but he can be portrayed as one of the most powerful beings in the universe. Mm-hmm. Or at least in the world, in terms of magic. But he started off, especially an origin story, a bit like, if you remember when Iron Man came out, it started with Tony Stark. It wasn't Iron Man. Doctor Strange started as an arrogant, egocentric surgeon. Mm-hmm. Almost a party boy, he could do no wrong. He was God's gift to everyone. And then he had a car crash, didn't lose his hands, but broke his hands and injured his hands. He couldn't perform surgery anymore. Okay. So he kind of, went off in the deep end, had a psychotic break. As you do, went off into the foreign climes and found himself in a mystic's cave, and then became taught. He got taught to be a mystic. Mm-hmm. So it's a very interesting character. It's got quirks. It's got ego. It's got magic. If they do it right, it could be very good. It could be like a good take of like the Dresden Files or Constantine, which I know they're talking about doing as well. So,
would you stop talking about our stories for later on?
I thought I hadn't read enough, but. It's because it's comics and movies. If we were talking about Star Wars, I'd go back to sleep.
Nice.
Actually, the difference between Constantine is dark, gritty. Magic exists, but if he can kick a bad guy or a summoned creature in the small squiggly bits, he'd rather do that than use magic. Mm-hmm. Doctor Strange is magic. It's all about the magic.
Now, Kevin Feige, of course, who's the head man over at Marvel.
Is it Feige or is it Kevin Feige?
No, it's Feige.
No, I thought we said Feige.
Has made no secret of the fact that Doctor Strange is his favourite character, and he has said since Avengers started that he wants Strange in these movies. Now, Marvel so far have done the science, they've done the aliens, they've done, they've sort of touched on the whole religious thing. This is the last. I'm going to drop now, yeah. This is the last big thing. This is magic. This is the final part of the puzzle to be
It fits in with that. It is a trifecta, I think, in a way. You've got science, you've got powers, and you've got magic. Yeah. Because Thor is kind of almost, according to Tony Stark, it's science. Yeah. According to him, it's magic and religion.
Well, Thor has sort of said that it's where he is science and religion, or science and magic, all in one thing.
Yeah, but I think because they've done Thor did so well, though that's the problem. Doctor Strange is not science. It's not technology.
It's magic.
It's pure magic. But he is kind of the opposite to Tony Stark. He doesn't create, he doesn't make, he doesn't create. It's not science. There's nothing to do with science. So it would be a really interesting character.
Do you think would he get away with the big cape and the big high collar and stuff?
Well, Thor did. It wouldn't be exactly the same, I don't think.
Yeah.
It would be a modern take on it.
Well, anyway, at the start of the week, Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Was heavily rumoured to be the man who's about to take
he
this
could put
on
off.
screen.
I know. I saw some. I don't know where I saw it, but I heard some complaints that we don't want Captain Jack Sparrow being the Sorcerer Supreme, but they need to see some of his earlier stuff and some of his newer stuff. He can do dark and sensible and serious.
Johnny Depp is a fantastic actor. It's just that he's been typecast in
like
last few years.
A lot of the Pirates movies and Wonderland and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and then that Lone Ranger thing that came out. When he doesn't. What was the one he did? The not Open Window, Lost Window, or when he played the writer that in the cabin.
It's a Stephen King story.
He was brilliant in that.
Terrible movie, but he was pretty good.
Yes, he was good.
Yeah,
he was tortured, and he's got the right amount of arrogance and ego in check that he could easily play. He could have played Tony Stark. He's got that sort of arrogance.
Now, one other name that has come out in the last few days, we haven't reported it yet in Fallen Air because it seems to be just very, very rumoury at the minute. But I want to say it because I'm very fond of this actor. Is John Hamm, who is Don Draper in Mad Men, the TV series Mad Men. Do you watch it? No. Okay, he's a phenomenal actor. Okay, he's an amazing actor.
Has he been in movies?
Not to be honest with you, his what he has done in movies hasn't been very impressive.
That's the problem. As much as he may be a brilliant actor, I don't think Marvel are going to take. They're on such a high at the moment, and they've got the bankroll behind them. They're going to cast names.
You think so?
I do, and but not names for the sake of it. But they're going to, like, they wouldn't, as much as we may love him, they're not going to cast Vin Diesel as Shakespeare. Yeah.
But the interesting thing with John Hamm is that he has, in recent years, been attached to Superman and Batman.
But see, DC, I mean, Henry Cavill, who knew him in America? Yeah, so he was in the Tudors. He didn't look anything like him. Well, Ben Affleck is Oscar winner, 2 times Oscar nominated.
Yeah, so what I'm saying name. Is, I personally, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think John Hamm
would be good.
Would be fantastic.
Okay.
And he's one of those actors, he's phenomenal on TV. Mad Men is one of the best TV shows ever made, there's no question. I think he's just waiting for that big role, and Marvel might see that.
They could take a chance on it?
Marvel might see that.
It depends, because I think where Marvel will be afraid, and they should be, they are one flop away from their whole, House of Cards falling down
you think
a bit.
So?
Yeah. DC, what, if they have another flop, they'll just brush it off and have another flop.
Yeah.
Or another good movie, whichever way they do it.
Yeah.
But Marvel have had such a, their phase 1 and 2 has been so good.
Okay. Tell us about Baron Wolfgang von Strucker.
He was mostly a Captain America bad guy, like in the Second World War. Yeah. Actually, sorry, not Captain America at the start. Howling Commandos. So Fury and the Howling Commandos.
He was one of Red Skull's men, wasn't he?
Kind of, yeah. Nazi kind of sympathizer. Well, pure on Nazi. Who worked with the Red Skull, worked with Zemo, Baron Zemo. And it was that ilk of character, like white supremacist who wanted to take over the world. And he was on the Nazi side, and obviously the Commandos and Captain America were on the Allied side. Okay,
now he has some disease or something. He has some disease inside him that if he dies will wipe out humanity. Is that right?
In some of the later storylines,
right? Okay,
but originally I think he was. I'm just trying to remember because it was the end of Marvel. The spectrum of Marvel I didn't read too much of because I was much more into the spandex rather than the kind of realistic war type ones.
What about your comic books?
Well, I kind of read them in spandex. But yeah, he did the thing. And also he was one of the people involved in Hydra.
Yes.
So he was a big boss there. He had, but they'll never appear in the movies. He had twin children who combined were called Fenris.
Right.
They had mutant powers when they touched skin.
Okay.
And what is really weird, there was a boy and a girl. There was overtures, Star Wars type hints that other things could have been going on between those two. But when the the sister died, so that the kid kept his powers, he basically flayed a skin off and used it to wrap around a sword so that he could still use his powers.
Lovely.
He just needed skin contact with
Beautiful.
family. Yeah, it was lovely. So it's that sort of character. It's not, flashy powers. It's more evil machinations.
Well, okay. Well, the rumor is that Thomas Kretschmann, who was he was in Wanted, and he was in, what else was he in? Yeah, I've just gone blank.
Isn't that Friday
King
the
Kong.
13th?
He was in King
Kong.
Kong.
Okay.
Apparently, he has been cast. Now, it hasn't been officially announced yet. Hollywood Reporter is saying that he has been
Next
cast.
Captain America movie, or
No, it'll be Age of Ultron, because Von Strucker is going to be in the Age of Ultron, and it seems like what they're going to do is they're going to have him kind of as Magneto. He's possibly going to be either Quicksilver's father or his adoptive father, as such.
just had to get my head. Sorry, the pause there was getting my head on straight. 'Cause obviously, there's a Quicksilver in Days of Future
Past,
who isn't
and
the same
different.
Quicksilver.
No.
Well, okay, that kind of makes sense though. If they're going to put a Quicksilver type, because it can't be called Quicksilver, can it?
Yeah, no, they're both
Really?
Quicksilver.
Okay.
Yeah.
If they're going to put that in the Avengers one, it's keeping that powers through. But I'm wondering why they don't just go for the Fenris storyline and have his own children with powers,
Yeah, I don't know.
rather than taking. It doesn't. That's a bit weird,
Mm.
especially seeing as having two Quicksilvers out in the same year almost.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. But anyway, so Thomas Kretschmann has apparently, according to Hollywood Reporter, has been cast, although it's been kept very, very quiet.
Okay, the powers there could work because rather than he is technologically based, a bit like Red Skull and so Strucker, Red Skull, all of those ones, and Zemo use enhancements, like trying to get the super soldier serum. So maybe it works, and that's how his son gets powers. I don't know, but it could kind of make sense. I'm just trying to see where the parallel or how it falls in that Ultron and Strucker would work together, because Ultron doesn't really need to work with anyone. He just hates all human life.
Yeah.
Sorry, all living life.
Okay.
But yeah, maybe he's a pawn. Maybe two different
He might just be in
storylines
the
coming
background.
together.
Yeah, may not even anything to do with Ultron.
Yeah.
directly.
No, I hadn't heard that one actually.
Okay, right. Now, the big news this week.
Okay.
One of our favourite pieces of news over the last couple of weeks, me and Saxon were quite giddy, was the casting of Paul Rudd as
Scott Lang.
As Ant-Man. Well, it's apparently Scott Lang now, although it still hasn't been confirmed.
No, Marvel haven't confirmed it.
Yeah.
I'll be back in a second.
You're quite all right. So we up until this point we knew that Paul Rudd was going to be Ant-Man. We didn't know, because there has been, of course, two. Is it only two? Three? There's been three Ant-Men in the Marvel comics. But we knew that he was going to be one of them, directed by, of course, by Edgar Wright. Then, all of a sudden, out of the blue, no, we didn't see it
No
coming.
flowers, no dinner.
There's always, straight in, no kissing. There was always...
Well, it does live up to his reputation.
But with all these stories, we know in the build-up that there's an announcement coming, and we always get a feel for what sort of actor they're going to go for, or So, Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man,
Yep.
has been cast,
Yep.
and he is to be played by
The octogenarian himself.
Michael Douglas.
Yeah. Who is a massively brilliant actor.
You know what? Before we get into it, I think this could be a Robert Downey Jr.-esque piece of casting. I think he's going to run with this.
I think the movie will be brilliant, but it won't be anywhere near the same as the comics. It can't be, because Hank Pym is a peer in terms of age and intelligence of Iron Man.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit older, a little bit younger, whichever you want to do it. But he's of the same ilk as the Avengers, the rest of them. In this, he's going to be old enough to be Paul Rudd's father.
Well, here's the thing. Right now, you might know your Marvel lore. Well, obviously, you do know your Marvel lore a lot better than me, so you might know what this is about. Our very own Chris Williams, who looks after the comics and does an amazing job.
Do you remember at one stage I was running comics and I was lazy? He's so good.
He's so good, isn't he? He's so good. But he reckons that this might be a future Hank Pym.
Could be.
Where he is a much older character, and that we are still to see another Hank Pym. Here's the question: does Michael Douglas look?
He does.
Like
he resembles
old Simon Pegg.
Maybe.
I can see that. I still think Simon Pegg is to be announced in this.
It could be, because Variety, the ones who led on this, I think, have retracted, or not retracted, they've hidden it. So it could be. Or it could just be that in this take of it, Hank Pym is just an older scientist who invents Pym particles and the Iron Man suit, but is too old to use himself, so Scott Lang comes in.
Ant-Man.
What did I say?
Iron Man.
Iron Man, sorry. Tired. But yeah, in the comics, obviously, there's a long history of Hank Pym being Ant-Man and a massive hero, and Yellow Jacket and Giant Man and everyone else. And Scott Lang doesn't take over for... decade, whatever way, I don't know, the Marvel time is very weird, but years and years after, Ant-Man's an established hero, retires, becomes full-time scientist. Maybe in this he's always a